Today is the yahrzeit of my great-grandfather, Rabbi Elimelech Weisblum of Lizhensk. He lived in Galicia in Eastern Europe, 1717 to 1787. He was one of the Chevra Kadisha, one of the holy group of the Magid, which was the student of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement. I'm privileged to be a 8th generation, son after son, after him. Our oldest son, we named after him. First one from the son after son in a family that named directly after him. The famous book that he wrote, it's called Noam Elimelech. The Noam Elimelech, also the name of my grandson. It's a beautiful work, which is the mystical interpretation of the Torah. My great-grandpa developed the concept of tzaddik, the mainstream in the Hasidic teaching. It's the development of the mystical aspect of the tzaddik. He's also very deep in the Kabbalistic interpretation of the Torah, and it became a very well known book that spread around the world in who knows how many copies, endless copies. The song that you're about to hear, it's in the family we believe that that's a song that he used to sing at his, which we call in the Hasidic world, tish. It's a table that he sang. It's a song that developed with 3 different stages, and I try to sing it in my very best, the way that I remember from my late grandfather, who was 6 generations, son after son, after him.
Yeah.
Before we begin our shiur, since we're getting close to Pesach, so two halachot in conjunction of Pesach. It's a Taf Ein Bet, 472 in the code. Dinei Haseiba Vedalet Kosot, the law concerning reclining and the drinking of the 4 glasses of wine on Pesach. I'm just reading the translation of the code in the Mishna Brura. One's table should be set for Seder night while it's still day, so that he will be able to eat immediately when it becomes dark. Even if one is in the Beit HaMidrash, the place of study, when the time of the Seder arrives, he should rise, because it's mitzvah to hurry to eat for the sake of the children, so they will not fall asleep. However, one should not say Kaddish until it has become dark. And here is the Mishnah Brura. What is actually meant, he said, so that he will be able to begin the Seder immediately when it becomes dark, and will not have to delay. And it means that if one engage in a Torah study, as regard to prayer, one must be brisk about the reading of Shema and the praying of the Ma'ariv, and go home at once. It's a mitzvah to hurry. It meant that one should perform the Seder briskly. This is required so the children will not fall asleep, because then they will know that one will not delay for long until they eat. Consequently, they will ask the questions, Ma nishtana, and will answer them, and thus fulfill the mitzvah written in the Torah, and you shall relate to your son on that day. However, one should not say Kiddush. One should not assume, since it is mitzvah to hurry, one should begin making Kiddush and relating the Haggadah while it's still day. So he said, because the Torah made the mitzvah of eating matzah comparable to the mitzvah of eating Pesach offering, and the Pesach offering can only be eaten at night, so Kiddush must be made at the time it's fit for eating the matzah. Furthermore, the glass of which we drink for the Kiddush is one of the 4 glasses of wine that one is required to drink on Pesach night. The time for drinking those all glasses follows the time of the relating the Haggadah and eating the matzah and the maror, and therefore it should not be ben hashmashot, it should be when it's become dark. Yesader shulchano yafeh, one should arrange his table attractively with beautiful utensils and according to the itzmin. And the Mishnah Brura said that even usually we don't do that, but since the Chorban Beit HaMikdash we don't do that, but in Pesach it's mitzvah to extend the manner of a free person. A person should prepare a place that you will sit, so they will be able to sit, recline in the manner of the free man. Even if one is poor and does not have pillows, he should sit on a bench, which means that it should express a joy. And then he said that when it's come to drinking the 4 cups, so sometimes you're thinking that one may do that in a different manner, but he said here, צריך לשתות 4 כוסות על הסדר, one must drink the 4 glasses of wine as arranged by the sages. If one drank them one after the other, not as arranged by the sages, he did not fulfill his obligation, which means, clearly he said it, that the Haggadah should be said between the drinking of the glasses. If one poured all the 4 glasses into a single glass and drank them together, he will certainly not fulfill his obligation. So the whole idea is to do it in a separate manners, and in between to read the Haggadah and give the interpretation of the meaning of the Seder. The page we're about to study is page 151. It's crucial in a sense of halakha. It's speaking about halachot of a dead body, a corpse, at the time of Shabbat and when the Shabbat is over. It's a lot of questions, such as how to treat the body, especially if the body has some type of odor, decay during the time of Shabbat, how you treated the body, how you handle if a situation of a non-Jew come there to help, how you treated the body in the circumstances that it's not moving the body but just helping the procedure, such as closing the eyes, etc. All the involvement of Shabbat and the corpse, it's a foundation of this page. For sure we have Agadeta, and we have also many derivative halachot indirectly from this page. The Mishnah said, מחשיכים על התחום לפקח על עסקי כלה ועל עסקי המת להביא לו ארון ותכריכים. There is a concept that's called הכנה משבת לחול, which means a person should not do a preparation from Shabbat to the weekday. So there are exceptions. One is, one may wait for the nightfall of Shabbat boundary to attend the need of the bride. So attend the need of the bride, in those days they used to take a martel right after Shabbat is over, and they made it for the beautification of the bride. So basically to uproot something from the ground, it's the labor, but to do the preparation from doing that, it's allowed, and also for the preparation of the corpse, such as you need to bring a coffin, you need to bring the shrouds, all this preparation of the burial, it's considering a heavenly need, in the sense that it's important to do it right away. The next one is a question in preparation for burial that made by a non-Jew. In basic foundation we learn many times that instructing a non-Jew to do something for us on Shabbat is forbidden. Not just forbidden, but derivative from that type of labor is forbidden even after Shabbat. So here they ask question in a circumstance of the burial process. They said, Nochri, if a non-Jew, shehevi chalilin b'Shabbat, in those days they used to bring a flute as part of the funeral process. They used to play a flute. So they said, if a non-Jew brought this on Shabbat, lo yispot b'hem Israel, a Jew shall not use it as a eulogy after Shabbat, ela im ken ba'u mimakom karov, only if they come from the Tchum Shabbat, as we explained, is at 2,000 amah. If it comes from the closest proximity, in a very close place, that's different. But there is here a discussion between Rashi and Tosfot. What's the issue of using them after Shabbat? Tosfot said that because the flute came from a close by within the Tchum Shabbat, it's not really a joy derivative from that sense. So therefore he allowed to do that. But not everyone goes along with this Tosfot. The last part of the Mishnah, later in the GEMARA, elaborate on all of that. Asulo Aron, if the non-Jew prepare either to sell it or for him a coffin, the Ramban said that using the word lo, it means that they did it for themselves, but also the Rashi said that even they made it for him or for himself. So it's a big question if the non-Jew did it for himself or for other people. So they said v'chafru lo kever, if they dig the grave during Shabbat. So the Mishnah said yikaver bo Yisrael, a Jew can go ahead and be buried there. For sure, the Ritva said that that's apply only after Shabbat, but ve'im bishvil Israel, if they dig it for just, they need to dig several graves because it's a potential of burial, that's different. But if they did it purposely, clearly, for the Jew, a specific one, lo yikaver bo olamit, it's not just to bury it right after Shabbat of prohibition. It's forever. A person cannot be buried there. And the Ramban and the Rashba said that it's applied to that specific person because that no one should ever think that it's in any way to circumvent the system and said, all right, Shabbat is over, let's bury him there. So it's not a prohibition for another fellow Jew that need to be buried to use that burial site, but for that specific person, the Mishnah said that it's forbidden. Now we're going to the GEMARA. The GEMARA said, "Mai mimakom karov." What does that mean when we say that when a non-Jew brought something from a nearly location on Shabbat? so a Jew is permitted to make use of it. So the Gemara asks, what exactly considered a nearby location? So Rav Amar mimakom karov mamash, which means that you see it in the beginning of Shabbat from the non-Jew who is outside of Tchum Shabbat. And Rashi here said, Klomar sheyadu lanu be'ur hadavar. So I explained in my book, Be'urei Klomar b'Rashi al Hashas, what's the meaning of the Klomar, the word Klomar in Rashi here. The key point, for sure, I urge you to read it directly from the book, but it's the idea for using the word mamash. Rashi want to say that that's applied, that we know clearly that we see it, that it's in his house, but if we are not sure if those flute came from inside the Tchum Shabbat or outside, we cannot use them. Shmuel say Chashinan Shema Chutz Lachoma Lanu. We are concerned that it may have stayed overnight just outside the city hall. So therefore, that if the non-Jew brought this flute on Shabbat, we cannot use them for the funeral process, only if we know clearly that that it's come from outside of Tchum Shabbat. Otherwise, it's not prohibited. So it we are thinking that since it's a question, they call safek. It's something that we're not sure. So when it's come to rabbinic things, the Mishnah Berurah and Shinkaf Hey explain that we usually are lenient in that sense. Chayshinan, it's something that we want to go to the stringencies, but here this sense we go in lenient. For sure, Rashi and Tosfot and other Meforshim, Ritva and Rosh, have a lot to say what exactly it means when we are clarified with this. But again, since it's not clear, that's the reason why we have here the machloket. We can learn this Mishnah according to Shmuel. Dektani, Asalo Aaron, if the non-Jew prepare a coffin, v'chafar lo kever, and he dig a grave, yikaver bo Yisrael, a Jew will be buried there. Alma, misfei kashare, it means that we are not certain, we go lenient. Utnan kvatei derav, we learn, however, on the other side, from the Mishnah, Tractate Shabbat, chapter 2, Ir she'Yisrael v'nochrim darim ba, if there is a city that you have a non-Jews as well as Jews live in that city, Shabbat, if you have there a bathhouse that used for both, for Jews and non-Jews, if most of the attendants were non-Jews, so you can use it after Shabbat right away. You're not concerned that people there hit the place doing Shabbat for those people who are non-Jews. However, if most of the people who are bathing in that place, Israel, they are Jews, he should wait until the water heat, which means enough time, enough time that you know that it was made specifically for the people after Shabbat. In other words, we want to make sure that the secretion of Shabbat, no one think that anybody did it for a Jew. Since in our circumstance no one knows for sure, so that's the idea that mechza al mechza, if we're not sure who and what, so a a Jew cannot use it as a bathhouse right after Shabbat. He needs to wait a certain period of time until there was reheats for them. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, באמבטיה קטנה אם יש ברשות, רוחץ במיד. If there is a VIP, a person that used that bathhouse, so he can use it right away after Shabbat, because he said that they made it for themselves, the non-Jew, and not for us. My rashut, meaning what is the meaning of the phrase a ruling power? אמר רב יהודה, אמר רב יצחק בן רב יהודה, אם יש בה אדם חשוב שיש לו 10 עבדים שמחמים לו 10 קומקומים בבת אחת, באמבטיה קטנה מותר לרחוץ בה מיד. If there is a very wealthy person, that you have 10 attendants, 10 servants that prepare this employee that prepared for him a bathhouse, so you can use it right away after Shabbat. Asu lo aron, if the non-Jew prepared for him coffin, and v'chafu lo kever, and dug a grave on Shabbat, so a Jew can be buried after Shabbat. That's the Mishnah. Amai, why are you allowed to bury a Jew right away after Shabbat? Should wait period of time until it let's say it take them 2 hours to dig a grave. You should wait these 2 hours after Shabbat is over. Why you need to do it right away? So because the non-Jew did not say clearly for whom he is doing this job, and even if we think that he is doing it for another fellow non-Jew, it's not clear. So you may think that he maybe did it for us. So we know clearly that if he did it for a specific person, so that specific person are forbidden to use that forever. That's clear. But that's only if it's absolute clear. But Tosfot Rabbi Akiva Iger said that, and the Taz said the same thing, that if we are in a safek, we're in a dilemma, we're not sure and what to do, so here we go stringent even if it's a dilemma, it's a quandary, it's not clear what to do, we go astringent because when it's come to Isu Anam Melechet Nochri, if it's come to deriving joy from a work of a non-Jew, on Shabbat we go more stringent. Amar Ula Omer Be'isratya. So if this is a grave that it's in a main street, so usually the Jews do not bury people over there. So we have the assumption that it was dig for a non-Jew. Teinach kever, that's clear for a grave. How about Aron Ma'ika Lememar? How about a coffin? Amar Rabbi Abau be'amutal kivo. If it's a coffin that it's in the graveside of the non-Jew, so it means that it was dig in a main road. So we think that it made it for that person. So and you see that scoffing there, so you assume that therefore that it's made there. It basically the Rashba and the Ritva and the Ran and Balamaor, all of them say that it's not becoming, it's very inappropriate, and it's even desecration for the deceased to be buried while it's a desecration of Shabbat. So therefore the assumption is that it's different. It's something that was made, placed over the grave of a non-Jew, which prove that it was intended for him only. The Mishnah said, Osim kol tzarkei hamet. We're allowed to go on Shabbat and perform all the needs for the dead on Shabbat. Example. So, sachin, we anointed with oil. So this is the whole idea that we want to avoid, which called bizyon hamet, the desecration of the corpse, because if it's a odor coming out and he's staying there with nothing, so that's a problem. So we have to do the minimum. So in other words, we're not allowed to do muktzeh meaning the set aside. We're not allowed to do it in a sense of moving hands or legs or things like that. However, we can put an oil, umadichin oto, we can pour a water, and it's one condition, you're not allowed to move any limb from the body, legs, hands, etc. So you're allowed to remove the pillow beneath and place it at the sand again. So you do that in order to express respect, but not moving any part of the body. Bishvil she'amtin, we just turn to page 151b, which means we want to delay the decomposition, which means that when it's Rashi explained, when he said the corpse standing in a place that it's hot, very quickly it's carry a bad odor, etc. So that's the way that we can delay that process. קושרים את הלחי לא באופן שיעלה לה או שלא יוסיף. We can tie the jaw of the corpse to the process of opening. And also, וכן קורה שנשברה, the same apply to a bean that was broken on Shabbat. סומכים אותה בספסל וברוחות המיטה. One may support it with a bench or with long poles from a bed. לא שתעלה אלא שלא תוסיף. That one may not move it so that the beam will rise back to its original place, but so that it will not continue to fall. So in other words, if you see his mouth coming, you can tighten it, and when it's beam, you cannot move it because it's a muktzeh.
Right.
But you can do it just in order to keep the process, and it will not continue to fall. גמרא, אמר רבי יהודה בר שמואל מעשה בתלמידו של רבי מאיר שנכנס אחריו לבית המרצה. The story about the son of Rabbi Meir, that he went after him to the bathhouse. ביקש להדיח את הקרקע. He wants to prepare the ground, the rinse the ground. אמר לו אין מדיחים. He said to him, you cannot do it on Shabbat. לסוך קרקע, אמר לו אין מסיחים. He want to smear the ground. He said you cannot smear because it's considering a muktzeh. It's set aside, and it's either if it's in a house, it's called boneh, it's building ashvat gumot to make it lining. If it's in a field, it's called choresh, it's like plowing. Now, the key point is that it's melechet boneh. So אמר לו, Rabbi Meir said to him, אין sachin. He said to him, you're not allowed. Why? So here you see that Rabbi Meir contradicted himself from one place. Why the Mishnah allowed to rinse the body, the dead body, and put anointing on with the oil if it's a muktzeh, if it's set aside. So the GEMARA said that it's different. Karka bekarka michalfa. The GEMARA said that people can be confused with the ground in another place, and the sages therefore prohibited these activities even on a tie floor, such as a bathhouse, that the concern that may come to do the dirt floor and smooth out. So here you have again Rashi explaining the word klomar. He explained it, klomar ahu lav mishum tiltulo la mishul shvui gumot. The issue there, I'll explain it in my book, Bira klomar berashi el hashas. Again, we don't have enough time for that, but I just give the idea that it's shvui gumot is not carrying, it's just smoothing it, and his melechet boneh is part of the building issue. That people should not confuse with the corpse. Corpse cannot be confused with the ground, and therefore permitted to rinse the corpse and smear it with oil. Now we started the idea of the Mishnah with the word kol, which means all. So what does that mean? So la'atui mai, what's included? La'atui adetanu rabanan. This is what the sages tell us. Mevin klei meikar. We bring like glass vessels that make it cold. Uklei matachot, and you bring also a metal vessel, and umanichim al kreiso, you put it on a dead body or the belly, on the stomach. Kedei shlo tipuach, in order to avoid that it's not swell. Ufokekim en tegavav klo shiknes behem haruach, and one may seal up his orifices that will not enter them and cause swelling. And Ve'av Shlomo HaMelech Amar B'chokhmato, even King Solomon said in his wisdom in the book of Kohelet, Ecclesiastic chapter 12, Ad asher lo yiratek chevel hakesef. So this is a pasuk that said, until before the silver cord is snapped asunder. So what does that mean? So he explains Zechud HaShitra. That's applied to the spine. And Vetarutz Gulat HaZahav Ze Ama. So and when you use the tarutz and the golden ball, gulat in shadow, that's referred to the member, which is like the spring of water. So that's the place that the water coming out. And then v'tishaver kad al hamabua, and the pitcher is broke at the fountain. That's part of what King Solomon said. Ze hakeres, that referred to the stomach. V'narotz galgal habor ze peresh, and the wheel. It's the pit is referred to the feces. V'chen hu omer, and that's what they said in the book of Malachi. The prophet Malachi said in chapter 2, V'zeriti pere shal pnechem peresh chageichem, and I will spread the dung upon your faces and the dung on your festival offering. So it means that the person after his demise, his stomach can be expanded. אמר רב הונא ואמרי לה, אמר רב חגה, אלו בני אדם שמלכים דברי תורה ועושים כל מיני חגים. Oy. He said that that's applied to people also, that instead of focusing on study Torah, they make every day as a day of having all this enjoyment, which means it's not against enjoyment, but the idea is that the Rambam said in Hilchot Deot that there are people who eat. I was once on a cruise, and you have about 7 or 8 meals a day, and at different floors and different locations and different things. And there are people who's like drinking and eating all day long and erasing their lives in vanity. That's what he meant, filling up their stomach. אמר רבי לוי, אמר הפאפי, אמר יהושע, לאחר 3 ימים קריסו נבקעת ונופל לו על פניו ואומרת לו טול מה שנתת לי. He said after 3 days, that's based on the sentence on the book of Jonah that said that Jonah was there for 3 days in the Leviathan. So they say that's applied at the time that the person go before the heavenly court, and it's the Zohar said that that's applied to the first several days after passing. So someone who's so spoiled with eating and drinking all his life, after his passing is like, in a sense, the stomach coming back against him and said, what you're doing with me, you waste your life in vanity. The halacha in Yoreh De'ah, Shinun Bet, tells us that when you see someone passing, we have the obligation to close the person's eyes. The Torah tells us in Genesis, in Bereshit 46, that Yosef, when Yaakov passed, etc., so it's the idea of closing the eyes of the deceased. The Zohar said that it's a very Kabbalistic concept. He said that after the righteous people passed, they can see the divine providence, and therefore there is a idea of closing the eyes. But the key point is, if it happens on Shabbat, is a question: do we allow to go and do that? So the Mishnah said, "En me'atzmin et hamet b'Shabbat." One may not shut the eyes of the deceased on Shabbat. Why? Because his body is muktzeh, it's set aside. Ve'lo bechol im metziat nefesh. And also, one may not shut the eyes on the weekday while the soul departs. We have said it many times that we're not allowed to do any passive euthanasia. And by doing so, in a way, even a second, you expedite the demise. If someone, the Mishnah said, shut the eyes while the soul departs, is considering as a murderer because he has hastened the person's demise. So that's important halacha. Tanu Rabbanan. If someone shut the eyes of a person while he's in the process of passing, but he's in a goses, which means it's in a matter of second or minutes or short time, it's still considering a living creature, and we're not allowed to do it. And he said it's like a murderer. Mashal lener shekavav olech adam maniach etzbotav alea miyad kavta. Imagine that you have a candle, and it's about to extinguish, but it's not. So if you place your hand, done, it's over. So it means that if someone is in that sense, every move can expedite his demise and is forbidden. Tanya, רבן שמעון גליל אומר, רוצה שיתעצמו עיניו של מן, נופח לו יין בחותמו, ונותן שמן לבריסי עיניו, ואוחז בשני גלולי גרליו, והם מתעצמים עליהם. He said, he gave a suggestion, most probably he has a lot of experience. He said that for a living day-old baby, he said that one who wants the eyes of the corpse to close should blow wine up with his nose and place oil between the eyelids and grab hold of its 2 big toes, and the eyes will shut by themselves. So now we explain the difference between that and a baby. Tana Rabban Shlomo Gamliel Omer, Tinok ben Yomo Chai Mechalim את השבת. The baby, if in 1 day old, we allowed to desecrate the Shabbat. However, David Melech Yisrael shemet and Mechalim את השבת. Even the King David, we're not allowed to desecrate the Shabbat for him. Even it was the most important. But here is the key point. Wants to say that or not. What exactly involved in because if you remember the story of King David, it was happened during that time, and it was a hot day, and it was a question what to do with the body to move it to a shady area, etc., but not to desecrating the Shabbat. So now here's the beauty of that. They said, אין מחללים שבת, עליו את השבת, תינוק בן יומו חי מחללים את השבת. אמרה תורה, חלל עליו שבת אחת, כדי שישמור שבתות הרבה. You desecrate one Shabbat for this one day old, in order for him to observe many שבתות. דוד מלך ישראל שמת, even the King David that is so important, he passed, אין מחללים עליו, you're not allowed to desecrate the Shabbat. Why? כיוון שמת אדם בטל מן המצוות. The person that is passed, he is exempt from mitzvot, which means he doesn't have the obligation to observe Shabbat anymore. והיינו דאמר רבי יוחנן, that's the way that Rabbi Yochanan interpreted the sentence on Tehillim, on Psalm 88. They said, במתים חופשי, כיוון שמת אדם נעשה חופשי מן המצוות. They said that they set apart among the dead, so once a person dies, he becomes free from the mitzvot. There is a discussion about it, what exactly involved in that sentence. There are several interpretations, but that's the way that the literal meaning. ותניא רבי שמעון בן אלעזר אומר, תינוק בן יומו חיים צריך לשומרו מן החולדה ומן העכברים. That if it's one old baby, in those days it was issues of mice, etc., whistle, so you don't need to do it. Why? Because usually the animals are afraid of a person, even a baby one day, and so weak. אבל אוג בן החבשן שמת, but even one so big like the biblical Og, the king of Bashan, that is humongous, צריך לשמור מן החולדה ומן העכברים. You have to observe, to guard this body from whistle and from mice. Why? שנאמר ומורחם ואתכם יהיה. The Torah said in Bereshit, in Genesis 9, that it's a blessing, and the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth. So that's apply. כל זמן שאדם חי אימתו מוטלת על הבריות. כיוון שמת בטלה אימתו. So the Zohar in Parshat Vayeshev explains that this is a special blessing, since a man created in the image of God. So image of God is part of the neshama, of the soul of a person, and therefore there is a great awe, the great awe of amazement from those animals upon a person. But if he passed, they are no longer feared of him. So you need to have a special guard for the body. And they use exaggeration example, like baby 1 day old versus Og, just to express the meaning. אמר רב פאפה, נקטין אריה הבית תרי לא נפיל. Even a lion will not jump on a couple, which means that he afraid even of one person. You see the image of God, he is not. So they said, Hadi kazina dem nafil. So you see that he jumped on a couple that walk together. So he said, the animal jump on a person according to him only if the animals think that it's another animal. They said in Tehillim, in the book of Psalms 49, the person, if he looks like an animal, so if it's behave like animal, look like animal, so the animal jump and attack him. But if he has the image of God, the animal is afraid of him. Rashi said that it happens as a consequence of a bad deed that the persons have. But the key point is that if a person behaves inappropriately, the fear that animals have, the awe that animals have, the image of God, he lose that image. And therefore, Maharal said, is appeal to them as the same. אמר רבי חנינא אסור לישון בבית יחידי. Rabbi Hanina said that the person should not sleep alone in the dark, which means that he should not put himself in a great fear. He should leave some light. וכל השן בבית יחידי אוחזתו לילית. This is some type of a spirit, is an evil spirit called לילית. So they said if a person need to be alone, he should leave some light, he should not sleep by himself. It's like the Zohar said that לילית is a name of the one of those demons. ותניא רבי שמעון בן אלעזר אומר, עשה עד שאתה מוצא. You should involve in doing tzedakah and doing different act of kindness and charity as long as you have the opportunity. ומצוי לך ועודך בידך. If you have the money or you have the essence and you are still in your domain, which means you have the control of your. ואף שלמה אמר בחוכמתו, King Solomon said in Ecclesiastic chapter 12, וזכור בורך בימי בחורתך עד אשר לא תבואו ימי הרעה. He said, and you should remember you Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come and the year arrive, and we will say, have no desire for them. So what does that mean? So they said, Elu zemeh zikna. This is the old age, that you have no less and less control of your situation. It will be days that I have no desire for them. It applies to the end of the days, which means שאין בהם לא זכות ולא חובה. That according to our sources, at the end of the days, it was such abundance of wealth and abundance of everything that a person doesn't. Nobody needs charity, and therefore you don't have anymore the opportunity to give something to. Or to have the sin of being greedy and miser and avoiding from giving tzedakah. Upliga de Shmuel, and Shmuel disagree with the that's the he said that there's no difference between now and the end of the days, Messianic era, only that we are free from all the subjugation of other nations, which means that we are fully free to express ourselves in our very best, with no fear of reactions or anti-Jewish sentiments or any subjugation and persecution, etc. Shene'emar, they said in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 15, Ki lo yechda levyon mekerev haaretz, for the poor will never cease from the land. So what does that mean? So it's all the days, including the end of the days. So according to Shmuel, it's not like that, but even the end of the days, even in the Messianic era, it will still be people that are poor and in need. Tanya Rabbi Elazar Kapar Omer, he said something very deep. He said, "Olam yevakesh adam rachamim al midah zo." A person should always pray that he should not be from one who would express a need. She'im hu lo ba bno, v'im bno lo ba ben bno. That unfortunately, he said the way that the world created by Hashem is turning around all the time. It's like a cycle of life. And therefore, if he is not poor, maybe his son, if his son not, his grandson. So therefore, Shene'emar, they said in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 15, Ki biglal hadavar hazeh, because of act of charity, Hashem will bless you. What does that mean, biglal? Tanu Dever Ishmael, galgalu shechozer laolam. He said that it's like a galgal, it's a wheel that turns in the world, which people continuously rise and fall. So therefore, the Maharsha explained that in every 3 generations, it hits the family. So therefore, only by making a lot of prayers and a lot of charity, a person can avoid this. But otherwise, it's every 3 generations, it hits every family. Amar Rav Yosef, naktinan haytzom v'ravnan lo mi'ani. So we have the tradition that if someone is a Torah scholar, he will not become indigent. So they said, we see that people who are Torah scholars are still poor. So the Gemara said, in ita de me'ani, even the circumstance that he become poor, we hope that doesn't need to knock doors, which means that people appreciate his wisdom and they come and they help you in his situation. Not to reach a point that you need to beg for charity. Amar le Rabbi Chia divtitu. Rabbi Chia said to his wife, Ki ate anya, when you see a poor person come to our door, akdim le rifta, prepare a bread, a sandwich, or something for him. Ki echad lekadmo levanayich. So it will be when your sons will need charity, the people will greet them with bread. Amra le milat kamalaiti lehu. Are you cursing me that the children will come to be poor? Amar le kraka katuv. It's not that I'm doing that. The Torah said, why? Ki biglal hadavar hazeh, because of this thing. V'tan dever Rabbi Ishmael v'galu shechozer olam. We just learned that there's a will that comes and goes, and unfortunately that's the way it is. That maybe our sons reach that point. Tanya Rabban Gamliel beRabbi Omer. Rabban Gamliel said, the Torah said in the book of Deuteronomy 13. God give you compassion upon you and have a mercy and increase you. Whoever have compassion upon the people, the heaven will have compassion upon him. And one who does not have a compassion for God's creatures, God, the heaven will not receive compassion, not give him compassion, not receive compassion from heaven. So it's like measure for measure. So that's what they said, that a person should always help the poor, because the poor help the rich more than the rich help the poor, in that sense that he saved his children of future generation from poverty. And then they said, that's continuation of the line that King Solomon said, until before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars were darkened. So they said, Zo padachat ve'achotem. That's applied to the padachat, the forehead and the nose. Ve'ayareach zo neshama. So that's an implication to a person's life, that the person change when he gets old. His forehead change. He lose some of his beauty. You always like to hear jokes, right? Mm-hmm. It's a story about a lady. She turned 60 and she was in a procedure in a hospital, and all of a sudden she heard a voice from heaven telling her that you're going to live another 40 years. So when she woke up, she said, all right, I'm going now to stay in a hospital and I have a full makeup plastic surgery that applied to my entire body, facial and the hair and the stomach and everything else. 2 weeks later, she was walking out of the hospital. Now she's no longer looks 60, she looks 35 the most. Walk on the street, car hits her, she's gone. She went before the Lord and she said, how come you promised me another 40 years of life? And the Lord said, I'm sorry, I did not recognize you. So they said, Vayareach zo neshama, and they said that the moon applied to the soul, והכוכבים אלו הלסתות, and the stars apply to the cheeks, which means it's a some type of allegory between the soul and the light. ושבו האבים אחר הגשם, and they said that the clouds come after the rain. זו מאור עיניו של אדם שהולך אחר הבכי. That if a person cries a lot, the vision decrease, and it's less and less and less. So when a person gets old and he realizes that he's weak and it's so many sorrow that he went through, so he cried, and therefore he lose part of his vision. אמר שמואל, היי דמעתה עד 40 שנין הדרה, מכאן ואילך לא הדרה. So he said about the cry up to the 40 years, it enhances his eyesight. From there on, it's filled the thick of the weaver pin. So it's, in other words, it's reduced. אמר רב נחמן על כוחל עד 40 שנין מרווח, מכאן ואילך אפילו למעלה כאביסן דגרידאי, או קום ממוקים אבל רבוך אלו מרווח. So in other words, in the age 40, it's changed, and it's it's the benefit that you have is no longer existed. Maika Mashman, what we learn from that? The kama de ali mikochala fema ale. So they said that the more eye shadow one applies, the more beneficial it is. So Rabbi Chanina shchiv lebarti. Rabbi Chanina, his daughter passed. Lo ava kabach ela. He didn't cry. Amar le Devitu, the wife said, "Tarnegola pikam betach." She said, well, you know, it's like, is a chicken come out of the house, which means that you don't show any sign of sorrow. Amar la tarte tichla ve'avara. So he asked her, what do you want? It's not enough that we lose the daughter. If I cry, I'll suffer twice from bereavement and from blindness. So Savar la, so GEMARA comment on that, Rabbi Chanina hold, כי עד אמר רבי יוחנן, the way that Rabbi Yochanan said, משום רבי יוסף בן קצרתא, 6 דמעות, there are 6 type of tears. 3 יפות, 3 is good for the eye, ו3 רעות, and 3 are bad for the eye, and של עשן ושל בכי. There is tears that come from smoke and the crying out of sorrow. So, and then he said, "V'shel beit hakiseh רעות ושל סם ושחוק של פירות יפות. And the pain that come out of the bathroom are bad for the eyes, and the tears that come from the medicinal drugs and from laughter and from the sharp produce are good for the eyes. So it's all depend what type of tears coming and what is good and what is bad for the eyes. Practical Hilchot Rambam, Hilchot Shabbat, chapter 24, Shulchan Aruch Or HaChaim, 325. If a non-Jew dug a grave or made of a coffin for another non-Jew on Shabbat, the coffin in the grave may be used for Jewish burial. However, if they were made for a Jew, that Jew may never be buried in that place. Nevertheless, they may be used for burying another person, another Jew. This law applies only when Shabbat was publicly desecrated to make the coffin and dig the grave. However, if they were made in private, they may be used by force of circumstance for a Jew. In this case, it is necessary to wait after Shabbat the amount of time it will take to make them. Another halacha is preparing all the need for the dead body. So they said one may attend to a corpse and do whatever is necessary for its honor on Shabbat, such as smearing it with oil or rinsing it. Similarly, one may secure its jaws so that its mouth will not open further, but one may not move it back to its original position. It is prohibited to move any of the corpse limbs to the prohibition of the muktzeh, of set aside subject, as the Mishna explained, and that's Shulchan Aruch Or HaChaim 3:11. V'ma'atzim metziat nefesh. We say that we're not allowed to involve in any passive euthanasia. So, an example, one may not shut the eyes of a person who is dying and gosses, nor may one perform any action that will hasten a person's demise by even a moment. That's the Yoredea 339. It's very important because that's the GEMARA call it a murderer. Also is a suggestion that one should not sleep alone in the house, and the Rambam in Sefer Mitzvot Gdolot, it's a positive mitzvah 79, they say that if one needs to do it, you should leave lights in the house. Also we say that if one have compassion upon the people, that's talk about tzedakah, so that's Rambam Hilchot Matnot Aniyim chapter 10 and Shulchan Aruch Or HaDeah 247. They said God acts with compassion toward one who is compassion on the poor. It's measure for measure. One should constantly be aware that he is seeking substance from Hashem, and just as he hoped that God will answer his own prayer, he should be receptive to the request of the poor. That's the Tur said. It is therefore customary to give charity before prayer. And that's very important that we should know that there is a life cycle always. And therefore a person should be very scrupulous in a manner of giving tzedakah.
Shula